Hi there, this is Ranjit, and in this video we'll be doing the review for this Micromax U Eureka, which is a very interesting handset by Micromax with the new branding that is known as U, and this is the first model known as U Eureka, and it is powered by CyanogenMod. And I just want to thank Jaydev because this is not my unit. He has loaned this unit to me for a couple of days so that I could do a review for all of you guys. And at the end of this video, I'll also be sharing the pros and cons that I have noticed with this U Eureka. To start off, this is actually a rebranded device, that is the CoolPad F2 with the U branding. U is a new brand by Micromax and the parent company is still Micromax, and this is the Eureka model that they have. And if you look at the specs, it offers some very incredible specs for the pricing. It's sold in India via Amazon.in via flash sales, and it sells for just 9,000 bucks. And I would say for that price, you are getting a very good deal. But again, it's not a perfect handset. There are some flaws with this device, and I'll be talking about them later on. But first, let me give you a physical overview of this device. On the top, we have the 3.5mm headphone jack, and here we have the power on off button, and these are actually tactile. So the clicky, they have very good click feel. Moving towards the bottom, we have the main microphone, and this is the micro USB slot that will be used for charging this device. And on this end, we also have the volume rocker. Again, this gives a very good feel. So in terms of the button feel, it is very good. Moving towards the back, we have the secondary noise cancellation mic, the main 13 megapixel camera with LED flash, U branding, and this is the opening for the speaker. The speaker volume is okay, I would say, but it's slightly low to my liking. But one thing I have noticed is that if you keep the speaker volume at max, this lower portion vibrates a little bit. We can easily open this back cover and access the battery. Let me actually show you that. We have an indent here, and we can easily open this up, and this reveals the battery. And the battery is a user replaceable battery. It's a 2500 milliamp hour battery, and it is a dual SIM device. As you can see, I've added one SIM here. The second SIM will go over here, and we can also add a micro SD card. So that is good. And another very good thing about this device is that this is 4G LTE compatible. So yes, it will work with 4G in India. So for that price point of about 9,000, you are getting, I feel, a lot with this device. The build quality is decent. I don't feel any creaking noise or anything like that with this device, but I don't know, the phone feels a little bit fragile to my liking. You says that it has a Gorilla Glass 3 protection, and the screen is a 5.5 inch screen, which is a 720p HD screen. And I would say the screen quality that they have put is actually pretty good. I really like one thing is that the whites actually look white. They don't look, what do you say, yellowish or very blue. But one thing I did notice is that the saturation levels are a little bit high to my liking. One thing I would suggest that if you are going to get this device, go to the settings and go to display and light, and here just disable this color enhancement. It's on by default, and if that is enabled, the actual pictures and everything look very artificial because that tries to enhance the colors and contrast. But I think so if you're a color purist, it adds a negative effect. So I would suggest that you disable that. Also, the good thing is that it runs on CyanogenMod. Hence, we have a ton of settings on this device. For example, we have these quick toggles, but if we can also go to the further settings, and here we have a lot of options. We also have themes, and if you notice, we have these touch type capacitive buttons on the bottom. But let's say you don't like these physical buttons and you want to have virtual buttons, that is also possible on this device. You can just go to this buttons option, and here if you click this, now we have virtual button. So as you can see, that also works pretty well. Now these physical buttons are disabled, and now we have the virtual button, so you can get that. So let me actually go back to the physical buttons. Another thing that I wanted to show you is that, let me disable that, and we are back to the physical button. By default, if you just tap on this, you get to this familiar Google launcher, but we have this theme support on this device, and by default the theme would be this U theme. I'm currently using the Holo theme that is also pre-installed. You can also shop for other themes if you would like. So the customization options available are very good. Another thing I like is that as this is a big device, we do also have that double tap to wake up the device, and it actually works pretty well. And we can also enable double tap here on the status bar to make it go to sleep, and that also works pretty well. So all these things actually work pretty well. Now, in terms of general responsiveness, the phone is pretty responsive, I would say. I have noticed minor lags, but that was when I was doing some heavy multitasking and I was playing background music. But for most of the part, I would say 99% of the time, the phone was very responsive. Now let's talk about the specs of this device. It is powered by the Snapdragon 615 chipset, which is an octa-core chipset. It comes with 2 gigs of RAM and the internal storage is 16 gigabytes. Moving towards the camera, the rear facing camera is a 13 megapixel shooter, front facing camera is a 5 megapixel shooter, and the battery is a 2500 milliamp hour battery. So as you can see from the specs point of view, we are getting a lot for the price. As I told you, it's sold in India for just about 9,000 bucks. That's just US $150. Let me actually show you the Android version also that comes pre-installed on this device. If you go to the settings and you go to about, as you can see, it's running on the Android version 4.4.4, that is KitKat. But Cyanogen has said that this device will be getting the Lollipop update very soon. And I would say the Cyanogen mod does offer you a lot of settings, so it's even great for power users. And if you go to storage, I really like the fact that Micromax and Eureka did not skimp on the storage. We get 16 gigabytes of internal storage, which is actually very good, because in these budget oriented devices generally we just get about 8 GB, and even some of the brands just give about 4 gigs of internal storage. But here we get 16 gigs of internal storage and we get almost about 12 odd GB available to you. I have installed a lot of apps and games, and then also as you can see we have 9.5 gigabytes of space left. We also have the micro SD card support, and it also works with USB OTG. I'll show you that a bit later. Moving to the sensors, we have the proximity sensor and the ambient light sensor. So we have the auto brightness sensor, but here I would say Eureka, you've skipped a few things. If we go to CPU Z and if I go to sensors, you'll notice that only these sensors are there. We don't even have a compass sensor and some other extra sensors that I thought would be there. But these sensors get the job done for 95% of the time. I also tested this device with GPS. So testing the GPS on this Eureka.
Use the second from the right lane to turn right after Liberty Junction on the left onto Bashirba Road, then turn left.
And the GPS lock was pretty quick. I would say it did it under around 20 seconds. As you can see,
turn
we are
left
moving
towards Hillford Road.
And it's taking about a second to reflect. It's not instantaneous. As you can see, we are making a turn now.
In 400 meters, turn right onto Hillford Road.
And
head
now
northwest on
it
Bashirba Road.
showed it on the map. So it's taking about 2 or 3 seconds
In
delay.
300 meters.
And the performance was pretty good, but as it does not have the compass sensor, when I was making sharp turns, it used to take 4 or 5 seconds for that to reflect on the screen. But I would say the GPS performance overall was very good on this device. Let me also show you the multi-touch points on this device, and it has 5 multi-touch points, as you can see. And the touch sensitivity was also pretty decent. I had no problems with that. But if you try to use the compass, as you can see, it does not have the compass sensor, so it simply does not work. So that is one thing you have to be aware of that. But again, as I told you, the price point is a very attractive price point. So yes, there are some sensors that are missing, but overall it gets the job done. And we have this multitasking tray, and if you notice, it is able to handle it very well. We can easily switch between the apps, and it does that thanks to that 2 gigs of RAM. And in general performance also, I found the phone to be pretty responsive. You can also just click here, you have to hold this button for a while, and if you just click here, you can kill all the apps. As you can see, I was running it with so many apps also. Then also the phone was pretty responsive in general operations. Now as we are connected to my Wi-Fi network, let's also do some web browsing, where we'll use the Chrome web browser that we have. And as you can see, it went to this TechMeme website, and just notice the pinch to zoom. The pinch to zoom performance is also pretty good on this device, and it handles most of the web pages without any issues. And if we go to rediff.com, and this will go to the desktop variant, as you can see, still it is loading it pretty well without any issues. For example, let's load up the story. Again, if you notice how quickly it's loading. So in terms of web browsing, I was pretty happy with this device. And another thing that I liked about this device is the screen quality. Just notice the white levels there. it is almost pure white, so hence it is pretty good. And also the viewing angles are very good. As you can see, if you just tilt it also, it does not fade away. Now if we move to the call quality on this device, here I would say the call quality was decent but not that great. Don't get me wrong, it's not bad, but sometimes the cellular call quality was a little bit muffled to my liking. To compare, I would say it is slightly better than the OnePlus One cellular call quality, but not as great as some other handsets. And if I have to rate the call quality, I would rate it somewhere around 8 out of 10. We also have a LED notification light over here, so when you charge the phone or you get missed call, etc., this will light up, and that works perfectly. Now if we move to the battery life, as I said, I've been testing this device just for 4 odd days, so I haven't completed my battery testing. I would say the battery life is sort of average. It's not very bad as some of the other users are saying, but again, I'm using this with the single SIM, and I would say the battery life is average, but not that great in my opinion. It would last you, for example, let me just show you this. If you go to the battery stats, the screen on time I have is just around 1 hour 16 minutes, but again, I was not using this phone heavily, and it's been 18 hours since I left it on the charger. I've been actively using it for the past 1 odd hour. I would say you can get close to about 3 odd hours of screen on time with about 14 to 15 odd hours of usage, and at that time the battery life was falling to about 15%. So I would say the battery life is decent but not that great. Considering that it has dual SIM support, I would have loved to have a slightly beefier battery. One thing that I would suggest, that if you buy this phone, by default if you go to mobile networks, it will be on LTE. I don't have LTE support, so I have put it manually on 3G. So if you're getting less battery life, instead of the LTE, just manually switch it to 3G or 2G network what you're using. That will help in getting slightly better battery life. Now, one annoying thing that I faced with this device is, in general operations, the phone did not exhibit overheating or something like that. Yes, the back gets slightly warm when you're using it on 3G outdoors or something like, and that is sort of normal. We see that in most handsets. But when I did some extended gaming, then the handset was heating up like crazy. It went to 52 degrees Celsius, which is insanely hot. In fact, I don't recommend phones that go over 44 degrees Celsius while gaming. So yes, this device can heat up, but it was not heating up in normal conditions. But when I was doing some extended gaming, it did heat up. But regarding gaming, it could handle many of the games without any issues. I even played some very heavy games like Asphalt 8 and Modern Combat 5, and it could play them without any issues. But the thing was that after about 10 odd minutes of gaming, the phone started to heat up like crazy. So you got to be aware of that. Moving to the camera, I would say the rear-facing camera does actually a pretty good job. In outdoor lighting conditions, it did a very good job. And even in semi-indoor conditions, it did pretty decent job. But in low lighting, it was struggling up a little bit. Though the rear-facing camera can record video up to 1080p, the 1080p video recordings were very soft to my liking. But when we move to the front-facing camera, which is a 5 megapixel shooter, I would say the front-facing camera did a very good job. The selfies and even the video that I took with the front-facing camera, though it's just at 720p, was pretty decent. So what do I feel about this Eureka by Micromax? Let me actually start with the pros and cons with this device, and I've made a list. So let's start with the pros first. And the biggest thing that I liked about this device is the internal storage. Micromax has provided 16 gigs of internal storage, which is unheard for this price point. And I would say it's a very good plus point for this device. Overall, when we talk about the general performance of this device was very snappy thanks to the Snapdragon 615 chipset and that 2 gigs of RAM. Even when I was doing heavy multitasking, the phone performed pretty well. For general operations, I would say you'll be very happy with this device. Next, when we move to CyanogenMod, that is powering this device, that offers us a lot of customization. So if you are a sort of a person who likes to customize a lot of stuff, then you really like this device. Next thing is the camera. The rear-facing camera as well as the front-facing camera are actually pretty good on this device, barring the video quality that I was getting from the rear-facing camera. Another thing that I really liked on this device is the 4G LTE support. Yes, this device supports 4G LTE in India, so it's also sort of future-proof. Now coming to some of the cons with this device that I have noticed is the speaker output. The speaker output is okay, but a little bit low to my liking. Also, I noticed that when I was keeping the speaker at max volume, the back was vibrating a little bit. That also, the next point that I have gone is, I would say this is nitpicking. As you can see, this device is pretty slim. And I know slimness is the new mantra these days, but I did notice that due to the slimness, the device feels a little bit fragile to my liking. For example, when I've just put this in my jeans pocket and when you drive a bike or something, it feels really tight. And I was really scared if I would bend this device. So yes, the slimness can be a pro and cons, but I would say the build quality is pretty good, but the device does feel a little bit fragile to my liking. I also noticed that for about 20% of the time, the proximity sensor does not work as expected while taking calls. Next thing is the battery. As I said, the battery life is not terrible, not great, but sort of mediocre. I would have loved to see a slightly beefier battery on this device. And the biggest con that I have with this device is the heating issues. Don't get me wrong, if you're not a heavy gamer or a very heavy user, you will not face the heating issues, because while using the phone normally, while taking 3G calls, etc., it was not heating. But when I played some heavy games on it for more than 10 minutes, it was heating up like crazy. So if you are a sort of a heavy gamer, then I would not suggest you this device because of its overheating issues. And lastly, as it's a Micromax device, I can't vouch about the after sales service of this device. But overall, still considering the price point of this device and the price to performance ratio, it's a very good device. And if the cons that I mentioned do not affect you, you can certainly go with this device. It's a pretty good device in my opinion. I hope that you found this video review helpful. I've also posted several other videos on this Eureka covering its various other aspects, so make sure you check them out. And if you're not subscribed to my YouTube channel, hit that subscribe button. Thanks for watching. This is Ranjit and I hope to see you in my next video.